But what that all led me into was doing more and more research and talking to a bunch of people. And I talked to Dr. Tony Huge, of all people. And he said,
doctor.
You know what if something like dings in your brain? He said, have you ever heard of Ibogaine for your pain?
Okay.
And it went ding. And I go, I just started recalling. I go, well, I talked to the top leading expert on Ibogaine, which is a synthetic version of Ibogaine. I talked to her at University of Miami when we were doing the Kratom movie, because she was telling me that Ibogaine and Kratom could possibly be, this double whammy for opioid addiction. Wow. And I didn't really know anything about Ibogaine. And then I heard another podcast where a girl was talking about, I think it was our boy Robert Sykes, Keto Savage, who I love. So listen to his podcast, and he was talking to some girl, and she was talking about Ibogaine, but she was talking about it for depression. And she said, it's just like somebody turned the lights back on, and I was just alive again. And I kept going, like, that's what I need. I would walk around just like in my head thinking, I need help, like mental help. I'm going mentally insane. Like, I'm in so much pain. I hurt. I can't figure out what to do with my life. And I'm 47 years old at the time. And I'm like, I'm a loser. I'm worthless. Like, my brother is so successful. Look at me. I got nothing, And I was like, I need something. But, as Mark says, everything actually comes from, within you, inside of you. I didn't really need something. I just needed to be pointed in that right direction. And when Tony Huge said to try Ibogaine, I think part of it was having so much hope in the actual process itself. I think that really helps the process. But I'll tell you, like, I met this guy, and he was out in Denver, and he said, hey man, I can treat you. I can come out there. Well, right when he was about to come out here, the pandemic hit. So we're fast forward to like March, right? It's March 16th. And he's like, I can't come out there, but I'm going to send this other guy out. He sends this guy, Jim from Boston, who's a total cartoon character. And this guy, first of all, he gets in the car. He's like, hey, how you doing? I'm Jim. I'm from Boston. And he's hilarious. And he's older. He's like 58 years old. And he's like, I go, so I'm talking to him like, how many times have you treated people with Ibogaine? He's like, just a couple. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm like, I could die today. And so Ibogaine's probably the strongest, I would call it the master psychedelic. They call it the alien molecule. Scientists have never seen anything like this. What it does is it is a tree bark from Gabon, Africa, that was actually found by the pygmies, and the pygmies use it. I can imagine like pygmies being like fucked up on Ibogaine, dancing around the forest. But the pygmies use it actually as a religious ritual, and it's called a reset. And it literally, this is going to get people really excited, literally resets all the neurotransmitters in your body. So it resets your opioid receptors, it resets your testosterone receptors, it resets all the receptors in your body like back to a default state. And the mechanism of it is sort of unknown, but they look at cells afterwards, and the cells are like completely repaired and fixed, and all this crazy shit happens that like nobody really knows about yet, but there's a lot of research being done on it. But it also, besides resetting everything, it can interrupt every single addiction known to man. So whether it's gambling or alcohol or pornography or whatever it may be, any sort of drug, it can sort of just basically stop that addiction dead in its track. I had a 30-year chewing tobacco habit. I would chew usually like just once a day, and I hated it because it's gross. Nobody likes it. There's nobody that would rather have you do it than not do it, I always had a cup to spit in. I always had a gross spit cup everywhere.
Sometimes drink it by accident.
Yeah, I've done that when I was drunk. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. But also I was really, really depressed. I was in so much pain. Like, I hurt my knee deadlifting on my sobriety birthday. A couple months before, I had pulled a 700-pound deadlift with the wagon wheels. So I cheated a little bit. Wagon wheels and trap bars and straps. But I was able to pull. Yeah, but it's not an Nsima 700, but it's 700. But I pulled that, and I also pulled my knee right out of the socket there. I mean, I just killed my knee. I basically tore my ACL. Partially. I never got it fixed because I didn't have insurance or anything. I was just like, screw it. I'm just going to lay off of it for a while. I actually couldn't walk and was on crutches for about 2 weeks, just skipping around on crutches with it. But I just was like letting it heal up, but it never really healed up, and it would always hurt. And it would kind of like go away and come back, go away and come back. But when I did Ibogaine, what was so crazy is I woke up the next day and I was going, I don't think my knee hurts anymore. I was like completely blown away. And for I would say about 7 months straight, I had absolutely zero pain in my knee. Lately, we've been pushing it really hard and training really hard, and pain will come back in my knee, but I feel like it's overuse, and I don't feel like I tell Mark, I got to be careful with what I say, because Ibogaine, like I would have this chronic pain in my body where I'd be laying on the couch, and I would, honestly, I just don't mean to sound like a pussy, but I would want to cry, because I'd be like, I can't even get up off the couch. What is wrong with me? I work out every day. I eat just meat. I'm doing all these things, but I can't seem to line things up. Things aren't working out for me for whatever reason. And then he'd say, well, try this. And I'd try that. And like, that would work a little bit, but not all the way. And try this. And I try, and also I would, to be honest, rigorously honest with myself, I would try stuff, but I didn't have enough heart to try it all the way. So I'd try something for like a week or two, and then I'd bomb out. And
we talked on previous shows about you even just trying to back away from stuff. And that's always been a problem.
Yeah, it's always been a problem. What Ibogaine does, though, is it allows you to detach from everything. So I did the Ibogaine. What I did is so this is actually really funny. On March 16th, the day before everything got shut down, this guy, Jim, he comes out from Boston. He literally gives me a couple pills. I made a movie about it called Ibogaines. That's on YouTube. You can go watch it. And I have a website called ibogaines.com where if people want to inquire about getting treated, they can do that as well. But Jim basically gave me a couple pills. I got violently ill for about 4 or 5 hours, to where I felt kind of the worst I've ever felt in my entire life. I was like, this isn't really pleasant, He told me it was like a lot shorter than I thought, so maybe it was, but I was definitely tripping. Like it's a hallucinogenic drug. So you definitely hallucinate. I was seeing all sorts of stuff. Jim is like an old school bodybuilder. He used to train Paul DeMeo and Mike Matarazzo, old school bodybuilders, and work with them a lot. And as he's talking, he's like, Mike Matarazzo, blah, blah, blah. And he's going like this. I'm like, dude, you look like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. He was like blue and purple, and like he looked like Batista. I don't know why, but like that's how I was seeing him. Yeah. And then he would talk, and he's just, after a while, I just started sounding like Charlie Brown's teacher. I was asking him like, hey, do you see all that shit on the TV? What is it? What's going on? He's like, nothing's on the TV. The TV's completely off. I was hearing loud buzzing noises. I just had this crazy trip, and then he gave me another pill, and this is all a process. It took like hours and hours.
You said you were ill. You were like throwing up and like shitting and stuff, right?
Yeah, I was throwing up really bad I thought it was hours, but he told me it was like 15 minutes to an hour. Like, he's like, it was no more than hours, probably like 15, 20 minutes where you're really sick. And I said, well, I thought it was like a really long time. I don't know. He's like, well, that's how it feels sometimes. But anyway, I was high for 3 days. I was high for 3 days straight.
I talked to him on the phone a couple times. It was weird.
You talked to him while he was on Ibogaine?
Yeah. Once I actually got high, it was like game over. What happened was I saw like a bright white light. They say that Ibogaine scrubs your receptors clean. Basically, it scrubs all the opioid receptors clean, everything. It actually felt like there was a scrubbing bubbles, on the commercials. It felt like the scrubbing bubbles were in my head. I felt like Axl Rose in the Welcome to the Jungle video, where he's in the electric chair and he's got that thing on his head and he's shaking back and forth and stuff. I felt like that, and I felt like I would shake and shake and shake, and then I'd have an explosion, like, right? And the explosion was like, there goes anxiety, there goes depression, there goes pain, and I had all this trauma from Mad Dog's death that I never dealt with because I was high when he died. And I'm like, you know what? I got to try to talk to Mad Dog, because they say you try to talk to Mad Dog. And so I talked to Mad Dog, and he was like, hey man, everything's cool. It was just that simple. There was no big religious weird thing. I mean, I know I didn't actually talk to Mad Dog, but I thought I talked to Mad Dog, and he just said, you know what, man, everything's cool. This is where I belong. I didn't belong down there with you guys. It was too much for me. I'm actually really happy where I am. I'm where I'm supposed to be. Some people just aren't meant to be cut. And I think this is maybe stuff that Mark told me, and it was sinking in subconsciously. But when I came out of it, I was just okay about everything. Like, I couldn't even believe it. I was like, what just happened? It's like, it's one of those things where it's like a revelation, and then you want to go tell the world. But I do realize, like 6 months after doing it, or actually almost a year after doing it, I feel like maybe it's not such a good thing to go tell everybody to do it, but when people are at the end of their rope, I think this is the option.
Yeah.
But also, I've been in rehab with a lot of people who fought really, really hard to get clean, and they just couldn't see the light.
But maybe somebody would start out with something like marijuana, or maybe they would start with kratom, or maybe they'd
Yeah.
start with mushrooms. Not that they do the same thing, but maybe
I do think that
maybe
psilocybin mushrooms,
or even just going to someone for help, just consulting.
yeah, exactly.
you know?
I think there's baby steps into
Right,
it.
right.
But I do think that psilocybin mushrooms can do a lot of the same thing for a lot cheaper